I never thought I would become the kind of person who installed security cameras. I lived in a quiet neighborhood in a small American town, where everyone waved at each other and kept their lawns neat. For years, nothing unusual ever happened. Then, one day, a package I had ordered disappeared from my front porch. At first, I assumed the delivery driver had made a mistake. But when a second package vanished a week later, I started getting suspicious. By the time the fourth package disappeared, I knew someone was taking them. The strange part was that only my deliveries were going missing. My neighbors never complained about stolen packages, and the local police said they couldn't do much without evidence. So I decided to buy a camera and find out what was really happening. The first few days after installing the camera were completely normal. Delivery trucks came and went, kids rode their bikes down the street, and nothing seemed out of place. Then one afternoon, I received a notification on my phone. A package had just been delivered. Curious, I opened the camera feed and watched. About 20 minutes later, a familiar figure casually walked up my driveway. It was my next-door neighbor, a middle-aged man named Greg. We had lived beside each other for nearly 3 years. We weren't close friends, but we always greeted each other politely. To my shock, I watched him pick up the package, glance around, and walk straight back to his house. I replayed the footage several times because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The next morning, I decided to confront him. I knocked on his door and tried to stay calm. When Greg answered, I asked if he had accidentally picked up one of my packages. His expression changed instantly. He denied everything. He claimed he had been home all evening and accused me of making false assumptions. I mentioned that I had security footage, but instead of apologizing, he became angry. He told me cameras were ruining the neighborhood and slammed the door in my face. I was stunned. I expected embarrassment, maybe even an excuse, but not aggression. After that conversation, I began noticing strange things. Greg would stare at me whenever I walked outside, and he stopped acknowledging me completely. A few days later, I contacted the police and showed them the video. They agreed that the footage looked suspicious, but because the value of the stolen package was relatively low, the process would take time. Meanwhile, more packages disappeared. Some belonged to me, while others appeared to belong to different houses. It became obvious that Greg wasn't just stealing occasionally. He had likely been doing it for months. The neighbors started talking about it. After I shared what had happened, several people admitted they had lost deliveries too, but never knew who was responsible. Suddenly, the entire street was paying attention. Cameras began appearing on multiple houses, and Greg seemed increasingly nervous whenever anyone mentioned missing packages. At that point, I came up with an idea. I ordered a large box and filled it with completely worthless items from my garage. On top, I placed a note that simply read, "Smile, you're on camera." Then I left the package on my porch and waited. Sure enough, less than an hour after delivery, Greg walked over. He looked around quickly, grabbed the box, and carried it home. A few minutes later, my phone alerted me to movement again. Greg stormed out of his house holding the box. His face was bright red with anger. He threw the package onto my lawn and started yelling that I was harassing him. Unfortunately for him, every second of that outburst was being recorded. The police returned after I submitted the new footage. This time, they took the situation much more seriously. Other neighbors also came forward with videos and records of missing deliveries. What started as a single stolen package quickly turned into a much larger investigation. Over the following weeks, officers recovered dozens of items from Greg's garage. Some packages were still unopened. Others contained things people had been waiting months to receive. The entire neighborhood was shocked. Greg had always seemed like a normal, friendly resident. No one imagined he was secretly taking deliveries from the very people who trusted him. Eventually, he was charged, and the stolen property was returned, whenever possible. The strangest part of the story came afterward. Once everything was over, several neighbors told me they had suspected something was wrong for a long time, but never wanted to accuse anyone without proof. The experience changed the way our community looked at trust. We became more careful, but we also became more connected. Neighbors started looking out for one another, sharing camera footage, when necessary, and helping collect packages for people who were away from home. As for me, I never expected a missing delivery to uncover a months-long theft operation next door. What began as a small inconvenience ended up exposing the person everyone trusted the most. And every time a package arrives safely at my door now, I'm reminded that sometimes the biggest surprises are hiding in plain sight.